Sam, and I'm going to be doing this webinar on e-commerce. Just before I start the webinar, I just want to make sure that my audio is clear. Let me know if anyone is having issues with listening to my voice. Wonderful. Okay. We've been doing these webinars for the last couple of weeks, and the whole idea of doing webinars is to help you guys have a better understanding about how to grow your business online and so on. Today's topic is about e-commerce, and it's more about what you need to do when you have an e-commerce store, how to make it successful, and so on. I'm going to go through the entire webinar. If you have any questions, you can either ask me at the end of the webinar, or if you need to discuss about your own website, you can always send me an email, and I'm happy to give you free consultation as to what you need to do to improve your e-commerce platform at the moment. So let's look at what I'm going to be covering in the next 60 minutes. While I was actually putting the webinar presentation together, I just realized that it's not just 5 tips, but there are more than that. So apologies, it's no more 5 tips on e-commerce. It's going to be basically 7 things that you need to look at when it comes to e-commerce solutions and so on. So in the next 60 minutes, I'm going to look at what are the various options that you have when you set up an e-commerce store. If you have an e-commerce store, what are the common things that you need to watch out for? And most importantly, where is the e-commerce industry heading to? Now, before I go into the presentation in detail, I'll quickly like to have an idea as to how many of y'all have an e-commerce store. So let me just put up a quick opinion poll around. The reason why I'm asking this at the moment is to have a better understanding of exactly what kind of audience I have today and how deep I need to go into in terms of the technical part of it, or look at the marketing part of it as such. So looking at the kind of responses I'm getting, and most of you all already have an e-commerce store. That's wonderful. Okay, first let's start off with the e-commerce trends, what's happening and why is it important. I guess now most of you all do understand that the online business is just going one way. It's just going exponentially increasing, practically on a monthly basis. The amount of purchases that happen online has increased drastically in the last couple of years, and it's quite evident that most people today find it extremely comfortable to shop online. The e-commerce store is not, the e-commerce business is not going to replace your traditional retail business, but it's mainly going to complement your existing retail business. There's still certain products in the market where you are not comfortable buying it online and you need to visit and retail store. So if you're looking at shutting down your retail business just because online is a way to go, you need to make sure that your customers are the people who would like to go online and shop and not walk into a store. Right now, if you speak to most businesses or anyone who is shopping online, the only reason why they don't shop online is if they're not sure what they want, or if they want the product right away. Imagine if you want to buy a gift for someone today, you can't go online and shop because it is not going to get delivered within the next half an hour, 1 hour. It's still going to take 3 or 4 days. However, in the US, things have changed. The average delivery time for e-commerce stores has gone down from practically 24 hours to around 8 hours and so on. And if you look at the figures, the amount of money people spend online is increasing on a fabulous rate. And not only that, the threat for today for businesses local out here is just not that, the retail business is losing because of the online boom. Within the online industry also, there's also a lot of competition, mainly from overseas stores and so on. So if you have an e-commerce store and if you're targeting a local audience out here, then you need to find out what is your unique selling point. Why would someone come to your store and not go to an online store somewhere overseas? What's also interesting is that the conversions that happen today online is not only driven by the price factor. Price has always been a factor why people shop online, but I guess the way we shop today has changed. Nowadays, most people, before they buy a product, they give a lot of importance to either product reviews or they look at price comparisons and take a decision. Okay. Nowadays, we don't just blindly go to an e-commerce store and make a decision. We've seen a big support from social media platforms. So nowadays what's happening is before you make a purchase, you're more likely to try to find out, are there any good reviews for the product? Has one of your friends or someone that you know has already used this product? So you look at recommendations coming from people you know, or you look at recommendations from product review sites which purely are not favoring a certain brand and so on. But what's important is that the conversions are increasing based on these social factors that are coming into picture. Most people today are reluctant to spend a lot of time on social media, but the fact is, if you have an e-commerce store and you want to make it successful, you have to take social media as a part of your strategy. Let's look at with regards to what are the trends and why people are so keen on making the e-commerce store successful. I guess what's really is happening is that there's been a lot of large brands spending time on building up a social media profile around their products. Okay, I guess we've changed the way we shop. We don't really call up someone today, a family friend or someone, to ask about a product. We tend to rely more on some of the reviews that we see on other websites, or we look at price comparison sites and so on. So if you have an e-commerce store and you need to make sure that you're giving your clients an option to basically add reviews about their product, talk about the experience, because that's what matters. If you look at websites which have got accommodation sites, most of those accommodation sites always have got reviews from people who stayed in the accommodation, and 90% of the people read those reviews. Based on that, they decide, should I stay in this place or not? Whether you have an online store or an offline store, I guess the selling process is practically the same. The only thing is that it's all about saying, if you have an e-commerce store, it's all about giving people the right kind of information. Okay, on an e-commerce store, some of the challenges that most people face is that you start a buying process. You start adding items into your shopping cart. You reach to the end of the shopping cart, and then you realize that the cost of shipment is much more than what you expected. So if you want to increase your conversions, you have to limit the amount of surprise elements within your website. It'll be a great thing if you're able to, if you've got a unique selling point which says free shipping Australia wide, then that has to be highly visible on your website. One of the other things with regards to customers is that because of the internet, there are hundreds of options for anyone searching for a product. So you got to make sure that you don't need to be the cheapest, but at the same time your prices need to be what's it's there in the market. You have an option of maybe having a slightly additional price advantage, provided you're adding additional functionality or benefits for it. One of the other things about an e-commerce store is that an e-commerce store is like an offline shopping experience. Sometimes you go and walk into a shopping center, and you buy things which you didn't plan to buy. The reason why you buy that is because you like the display or you like the layout of a certain retail store. The same thing goes with an e-commerce store. If someone comes to your website, you got to make it them extremely easy for them to buy products, or maybe information that is delivered to in a right format. Okay, you have to understand customers are not going to take extra pain to take a purchase from you. So it's in your interest, if someone comes to your website, how do you get them to feel comfortable, easy to access, and so on. One of the most important things today with e-commerce stores is the policies that you have around refund, money back guarantee, and so on. Okay. In the US, they did a study and realized that companies that offer a refund policy and have return back policy highly visible on the website were getting better conversions. Because the only problem that you have on an online shopping experience is that you're not talking to the owner of the shop, you're not looking at a retail front. So an e-commerce store can be there today. If it's not there tomorrow, then how do you track it down? So it's all about if someone buys a product from you, there's always issues. What if I ordered the wrong product? Or what if the product is not suitable for me? What's your return policy? So based on that, you got to make sure that you're giving the extra comfort level that customers have. Some e-commerce stores have got what you call as a frequently asked questions section, which is really important because there are some clients who don't have a proper understanding about is the product suitable for them. There are questions that someone would like to ask a salesperson over the counter. If you know what the 10 most common Q&As about your products are, it's a great thing to put that on your website and have something called as a frequently asked questions. One of the biggest success with online stores is that it gives someone the freedom to shop 24/7, which you can't do on a retail front. Imagine 80% of the retail stores in Australia close at 5 o'clock. What's going to happen after that? You just can't shop. Whereas with the online store, the experience is totally different. You've got the ability to shop as and when you want. Let's have a quick look at what kind of e-commerce platforms are there, and it's a good thing. Even if you have an e-commerce store, sometimes it's good to find out, have I used the right product, or is there limitations with my products, and so on. So normally when you look at an e-commerce platform or an e-commerce website, there are three kinds of e-commerce products. One is what you call as a DIY e-commerce product. Then you've got open source e-commerce products where you do not have licensing fee. And then finally you've got a custom built e-commerce store which is designed to fit your look and feel that you want, and so on. So let's look at the DIY e-commerce products to start with. Now the advantage with a DIY e-commerce platform is that it's a low cost in terms of an investment. Normally when you want to get an e-commerce store website designed, if you go to a web designer, you're more likely to spend anything between $4,000 to $10,000 to build an e-commerce store. But some of the e-commerce platforms would come with extremely low investment. Products from ePages or Interspire or Easy Merchant are products which are priced on a monthly basis. So it means that every month you're going to be paying for the renting of the shopping cart software. The good thing about this solution is that if you're not sure whether there's a market for your products, then this is a good step to take. So even in 6 months' time, if you do not sell anything, at the most you've lost is around $300 or so. So if you're not sure about there's a market for your product, or you're not sure whether you're going to be successful, or you're running low on investment or budget, a good thing to do is to consider one of these DIY platforms. I guess there are hundreds of DIY platforms. What you need to look at is more about what kind of templates they have, what kind of support the provider would provide you, and most importantly, the functionalities that you're after, are they there on these products or not. Let's have a quick look at some of the benefits of using these DIY solutions. What you got to look at is, from a DIY solution, it's low cost. That means you practically are not paying, a high upfront cost. It's a monthly fee they're paying out. Because most of these DIY solutions have got loads of functionality, you'll get all this functionality for the same package price. And I think the good thing about a DIY solution is that you can get a platform ready within a couple of hours, and it depends upon how much time you have to set up your e-commerce store. However, on the flip side, if you look at some of the issues with the DIY solution, the biggest issue is that you are renting a platform. So if you run an e-commerce platform on a DIY solution which is hosted, after 2 years, if you plan to go to another provider, you might have to start all over again. So that's one of the biggest concerns why some businesses don't like to use a DIY option. Some of the other concerns are around the templates that are there. Some of the DIY solutions, you've got limited access to make changes to those templates. Some will give you a lot of access and so on. And also the level of support that you can get for DIY solutions. Because it's a DIY product, the company that provides you might provide you a very low level of support, because end of the day, they're charging you only a monthly fee. They will not spend hours helping you set up your own e-commerce store. If you feel that you have a little bit of technical skills in terms of playing around with images and so on, then a DIY solution is not a difficult one to use. The next thing we look at is more about the e-commerce or the open source platforms. Now, open source e-commerce platforms are softwares which there is no license free. So these are free software. You can download WordPress, Magento, OS Commerce, PrestaShop for free. The only thing that you might need to pay someone is to build your website on that. Now, open source products are getting quite popular because most web designers would like to use open source platform, and there are thousands of modules that are there on these e-commerce platforms to be used. So great thing about open source products are there's absolutely no license fee. You get 1,000+ add-ons you use from, and then most importantly, it's kind of quite popular with web designers and so on. However, with issues with open source technology is that if you're using something like WordPress and you don't update the version of WordPress, there's a strong chance that your website might get hacked. So the biggest problem with open source technology is that they are more prone to get hacked than other e-commerce platforms. At Netregistry, we host a lot of websites, and on a daily basis we see a lot of websites getting compromised, and a good percentage of them are WordPress sites and so on. So if you plan to use open source, you need to learn how to update the patches, because if you do not update the patches, then most likely you could get hacked. The last option when it comes to e-commerce is if you're very particular with the look and feel of your website that you want, then the only other option is to go to a web design company and say, I want to get a website design. So a custom built e-commerce solution again could be anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000. It all depends upon what you want. Now let's go on to the actual things that you can do with your e-commerce platform. So I did talk about 5 tips. I'm actually going to talk about 7 instead of 5. So I'm assuming most of you guys have an e-commerce store. So let's look at what are the things that can help you improve your existing e-commerce stores. The first thing that comes to my mind when it comes to e-commerce success is to do with your conversion rates. Now, if you look at, if there are 100 people going to your website every day, it doesn't mean that you're going to get 100 sales. Depending upon the kind of industry you're into, and depending upon how attractive your products and services are, your conversion rate could be anything from 1% to 5%. There are very few websites which have a conversion rate of more than 10%. What it really means is that out of every 100 people who go to your website, less than 10 of them might actually complete a transaction. So the first thing you got to look at is, how do I improve my conversion rate? the best way to improve your conversion rate is to drive qualified people to your website. So that means you got to make sure that if someone is going onto the internet and doing a search for a specific product or service, you need to get them at the right time. For example, let's say you're selling televisions. You don't want to be on the first page of Google for someone looking out for LCD televisions, because then they have not actually told you what they're after. But you rather come up on the first page of Google for Sony LCD 3D or Sony 3D television if that's what you specialize in. So what you got to look at is, maybe this goes back to about how to drive qualified traffic to your website using search engine optimization, Google AdWords, and so on. You got to make sure that when people come to your website, they actually are on a buying mode, okay? Because they're more likely to get qualified. Just like a retail store, if you have a retail store, someone walks into the store and says, "I'm just looking around," as compared to someone coming and saying, "Do you sell this specific product?" So if you're able to find out exactly what is the qualified keywords for your business, then automatically the conversion rates of your website will improve, because you're showing people what they want. If you've not used Google Analytics for your website, I strongly recommend get Google Analytics installed, and it'll actually tell you what's happening on your website. The next thing we normally would look at is what we call as website usability. You got to make sure that it is extremely simple for someone to make a purchase online. A lot of times, you go to a website and you have no clue how long the entire process is going to take. So the shorter the process, the more likely you're going to retain that customer. But imagine if your entire web e-commerce functionality is so complex, or it goes into so many steps, there's a strong chance that people are going to drop off. When someone starts doing a purchase on your website, it's really important for them to have an understanding about how long will the entire transaction take. So it's a good thing to say whether you have 3 steps or 4 steps. If possible, have an option where people can simply have a quick express checkout, because it matters a lot. We're becoming extremely impatient. Someone comes to your website, and imagine if it's going to take them 10 or 15 minutes to take a purchase, there's a strong chance that either they need to go away from the computer, or okay, has anyone else lost audio? I just got a message saying that there's no audio on the presentation. Am I still loud and clear? Okay. Okay, great. Sorry, someone had an issue, so I think it might be more to do with their computer. Anyway, let me get back to what I was talking about, is website usability. So it's really important that when someone comes to your website, you make it extremely clear as to how long the entire transaction is going to take place. It happens on our own website. At Netregistry, a lot of customers come and buy domains from us. What we've seen is that one is there's a large increase on number of people actually using their iPhone or their iPads to buy domain names. Now, buying a domain name is not a short process. You have to go through the process where first you got to make sure that the domain that you're after is up for grabs. The next thing, you got to go through a process of providing your ABN number and ACN numbers. We ourselves have spent a lot of time trying to reduce the amount of time and efforts. So if you have an e-commerce website right now, it's a good thing to get someone, either as a friend or family, to go and actually do a transaction online. Okay, someone who's never gone to your website, because you might look at your e-commerce store and you might find everything is very simple and straightforward, but someone else going to your website might find that there are too many questions asked, or it's taking a long time to load up, and so on. What's also important is with regards to the load time of your website. Okay, assuming that the number of mobile users are going to increase, it's really important to make sure that your e-commerce store loads pretty quickly. If it takes a long time to load, mainly because of wherever you're hosted, there's a strong chance that someone is going to hit the back button and go somewhere else. We all do that. If imagine if you're out of your office, you have an iPhone or an Android phone, you want to search for something, you go onto the phone, you start searching for it. If the page takes more than 10 seconds to load, you're more likely to hit the back button and go somewhere else. Imagine what that can do to your e-commerce store. That's the actual loss of revenue. So make sure that your website loads up pretty quick. There are a couple of tools available which can help you understand whether your website is loading up quickly or not. Using those tools, you can find out what's the average time it takes for your pages to load up. The next important thing also is that you got to make things extremely clear and right on top, like things like your unique selling point. If you're offering free shipment, that has to be highly visible. If you're offering free insurance, that needs to be available. If you're providing refunds or returns, that should be highly visible. What's important is that when someone comes to your e-commerce store, they need to feel safe that I'm buying from an organization. I'm not buying from a website. Because imagine, you go to a website, you make a purchase, and for some reason tomorrow the website doesn't exist. That normally doesn't happen with a retail store. That's why there are still a certain percentage of people who are not comfortable shopping online because they fear that what if I put my money online and the products don't arrive. So if you look at usability in terms of homepage, I think what you need to understand is that the homepage is the most important property of your website. Your homepage is just like your retail shop, window. So people look at that retail, when you're going to a shopping center, a lot of people do window shopping. They see what's on display. Looking at those products and how it's been displayed, they're more likely to walk into the store. So the same thing goes with an e-commerce store. A lot of people do window shopping online. What they really do is they go into an online store, they look at the home page, and then decide on should I shop here, should I not shop here. So depending upon the products and services you offer, you need to have the right kind of message on your website. It needs to be highly visible what you sell or what you provide. It needs to tell someone why they should consider you. So your unique selling point should be highly visible on the home page. Anything in terms of unique selling points, whether it's free shipment, quick shipment, that needs to be highly visible. Plus, if you're providing products or services which are seasonal business, make sure that, if it's time for Christmas, talk about what you can provide for Christmas. Like nowadays, I guess in the next couple of days, most people will start shopping online, trying to buy Christmas gifts for their family. So if you are providing gifts which services or products that people would buy for Christmas, make sure that you have a seasonal campaign around that. Okay. What's also important is how people shop online. There are some people who shop based on price, some people shop based on brand, and there are some people who just look for something different and so on. So depending upon the kind of industry you're into, you got to make sure that that message is highly visible on the home page. And most importantly, don't make your home page extremely long, because a lot of people don't even scroll down. So when someone opens up your website, what they see on the screen is something which is highly visible. Let's look at an example of a good home page. Now if you look at this website, it's got a very good image. It's got an easy option for someone to navigate through. There is a link that goes on to a competition. There's an option where someone can simply go and do a search for a product or service. So what's happening with this website is that it's building up some kind of credibility. That means it's just not that you have to go and follow a certain pattern. You can attract people at different time intervals and different mindsets. If someone is in a mood to do window shopping, they would like to know what are your options. Or if someone is not sure what they're looking out for but has been recommended to come to your website, they might go onto the search bar and so on. I'll just check out whether anyone else is still having a problem with their audio. Just give me 1 minute. The next thing also important is not only your homepage, but what is the process within your inner pages. The product pages, is that something which you have to look at, because getting people into your door is important. What's also important is once they walk into your retail store or your online store, how well have you displayed your products. So your product page is like a shelf on a retail store. If you do not put the items in the right structure on an easy way to look around, most likely people will struggle to find the right kind of product. On your product page is where you got to understand that's the second step of your e-commerce process. The first step is to get someone interested in your products and services. The next step is to get them to take action. That means to buy a product from you. So on the product page, the main focus should be around the buy now option. What will make someone click the buy now button? Okay. Depending upon again the industry you're into, you can either have a lot of images, because having a lot of images about products that you provide, especially if you're selling, garments or shoes or whatever it is, images will make a lot of difference. So have multiple images, different views of the same product. That'll help. The next thing also to have is an option where someone could, zoom in and get a better view of your images and so on. What is also important is that at a product level, you're able to tell people whether do you have it in stock, are you running out of stock, or when the product is visible. What also is essential is that if you are able to offer product reviews for your customers. In other words, what happens is, let's say if I go and buy a product from your website, I like the product. Okay, it'll be great if if as a shop owner you can get positive feedback from me, because that will only help me to get your store to sell more products. And as I discussed earlier, nowadays a lot of people tend to take the product reviews a bit more seriously than what they used to a couple of years back. What also is good is that when people shop, either they shop for themselves or they shop for family or friends. You should have an option where someone can come to your product page and click on a tab where they can share that page with a friend or someone. So you need to have an option where someone can say email it to a friend or so on. These are small things, but what happens is that they all contribute to increasing your conversion rates. Now, if you're using DIY products, sometimes you might have an issue and so on, but most products on e-commerce products today have these features as standard features. So if you look at this example site, for example, there's multiple images for the product. You can enlarge the image. There's an option for cross-selling. There's an option to tell a friend or share it on Facebook or whatever it is. There's an option to get more information about the product and so on. End of the day, your e-commerce store is just like a shopping experience. The more easier you make it, the more clear it is, the more chances you're going to sell more. The next important thing is the checkout process. I mean, just consider a checkout process as someone actually coming to your retail store, coming to your counter with their credit card and waiting to pay you money. That's exactly what happens when someone reaches a checkout option on your website. You practically done 75% of your job of getting them interested in your product, ensuring that it's value for money for them. They have added that to the shopping basket, and now we've come to the checkout option. And guess what? at least almost 50% of people or web e-commerce stores actually lose out on checkout. So what can really go down? Things like, maybe someone reaches the checkout option and then finally the next process that they go through is a bit of a painful process. Don't ask too many questions. If you have an e-commerce store, follow the simple principle is keep your mouth shut, take the money and move on. Okay, but if you're going to ask someone 10 different questions about where did you find the product, about a business, will you recommend this to someone else, how do you rate our website, how was the user experience, that's too many questions to ask. Okay, make sure if you want to collect information, you can always do that after the purchase has happened. Okay, at a checkout process, you got to make it as simple as possible. The more number of clicks, the more number of fields to enter, the less number of sales you're going to get. Also, as an e-commerce store, you got to look at your payment options. You need to have multiple options, and also you got to make sure that the website is secured. So all e-commerce stores have an SSL certificate, but that needs to be highly visible, saying that our website is secured. We basically are covered by VeriSign or GeoTrust or any of these certificate companies. So don't worry. You can comfortably go ahead, put in your credit card details, and if there's any issues, there's enough assurance to actually cover up from what's happening. So it's really important, you understand what happens with regards to a checkout process, because if you don't get that right, people will come to all the entire process, go to the checkout, and then actually not complete the transaction. What's also important is if you look at a checkout page, you'll see that you got to make it extremely simple for someone to understand at what stage of the e-commerce process they're into, how many more steps are left. You got to be very clear that what is the cost of shipment, because if that's not visible, then again that's a surprise element to someone at the end of the process. Most importantly, you got to make sure that the payment options that you actually provide, so whether it's PayPal, whether it's credit card or whatever, it has to be highly visible on your checkout page. If you don't take care of that, then what happens is people come to your website, they add things to your shopping basket and never buy anything from you. So it's a good thing maybe for you to actually do a dummy purchase on your website and see how long does it take for someone to actually buy something from you once they made up their mind. So once they start the checkout process, how long does it take? Okay, it'll be great if you can have like an express checkout. So based on the kind of business you're into, you can either have repeat customers or one-off customers. If you have repeat customers, there is value for someone to sign up. But if you want someone to sign up, you need to tell them what are the benefits of actually signing up and being a signed up user. But if you want to make it simple, a great thing to do is to have an express checkout where someone can simply put in the credit card details, hit the checkout button, pay you the money, and the transaction is complete. So if you look at this shopping cart process, you'll see that it makes it extremely easy for someone to take a decision and complete the transaction. If your checkout process is too complicated, then you're going to lose out on sales. So any kind of marketing that you do for your business, imagine you spend money on Google AdWords, drive people to your website. They start buying things, but they don't complete the transaction. It's not because they've changed their mind. It's that you made it difficult for them to complete the transaction. The other thing you would also look at is how do you engage your audience. A lot of times with e-commerce stores, what happens is that someone comes to your website, they look at products and services, and they're not able to make up their mind as to what they need to buy. So they're a bit confused. Should I buy product A, product B, or product C? Okay, so they may not buy right away, but you got to think about how can you get them back. Okay, because imagine if you want to send flowers to someone, you go online and you start the buying process, and all of a sudden you realize you do not have their the mailing address or whatever it is. So you're more likely to say, okay, let me call them up first and then go back online and do a purchase. So if you have an e-commerce store, you got to make sure that you got to have customers who come into your website. They may or may not buy directly or straight away. So what can you do for them to come back? How do you actually get them to say, okay, I have to go back to that store because I saw the right kind of products? Okay, what you got to look at is, why was your website a bit different? Was it the ease of using it? Was it the search option? Were the images for the products good, and so on? I've seen in the past a lot of people, when they do e-commerce stores, they don't worry about the content. All they think about is it's price, price, price. But you have to understand that you need to have good content. You got to have professional images. You can't just take images from your digital camera and say, that image looks great, let me put on the website. Okay. Consider your product page has a display. If the items on display don't look attractive, why would someone buy from you? Okay. So when someone comes to your website, they may not be ready to take a decision now, but think about something that you can do within your business that will make them come back. It could be offering them a limited offer, so that you're telling them that you've come to my website, you've got a window of 4 hours to take a decision. It works really well for a lot of industries. A perfect example is someone like Netregistry. We've increased our conversions on hosting by almost 4% by providing a window of a sale option. So when someone comes to our website, we run a sale which says this 40% discount for hosting is valid for the next 4 hours. So we're creating a bit of urgency for someone to take a decision. And if you're able to do that, it'll actually make people come back to you. The problem with e-commerce stores is that, it's great, it's easy to get an e-commerce store, but it's really difficult to make money out of it if you do not look into all those factors. What's also important is search, which is really important. I mean, it's no point having a good looking e-commerce stores if you can't drive people to your website. It's quite simple, right? If Google can't find your website, nor can your potential customers. Okay, so you realize that practically over 80% of people who buy online, they buy, or their decision is based on what research they've done online, either on Google, Yahoo, or Bing. So as a part of your e-commerce strategy, you got to make sure that you are putting some kind of resources in search engine optimization, or if you have resources and if you have the budget, it's a great thing to use pay-per-click to test the market. A lot of times, you do not know how people would react to your product, or do you have the right price, and so on. A great way to test that is to use Google AdWords, because within a week's time or 2 weeks' time, you'll come to know whether is there a market for the product, or have you got the pricing right. Okay. So as a part of your entire online strategy, if you have an e-commerce store today and if you're not getting sales, okay, one of the key factors will definitely be how visible you are on the internet. In other words, are you found on search engines? Are you driving the right kind of people to your website? If you're dealing with a specific product or service, okay, what happens is 90% of the people who go on to Google and search for your product and service do not go beyond the first page of Google results. So in other words, if you're not on the first page of Google for your chosen keywords and phrases, you're going to lose 90% of your market share, whether you like it or not. See, for most businesses today, e-commerce store is getting important, but what's also important is, what can you do to make sure that you've got enough traffic coming onto your website. The same scenario, applies to retail business. Imagine, there are a lot of shopping centers which are struggling to drive people to the shopping center, because if people do not enter the shopping center, those shops are not going to sell. And nowadays, there are so many shopping centers and people don't have time. So unless there is a reason for someone to come to the shopping center, then only will they make a purchase. So think about your e-commerce store similar to a retail business. Nothing changes, The people who shop are the same people. The only thing is that the entire e-commerce or an online store is making things much more easier. it's a good thing to find out, where do you actually stand on Google for your keywords and phrases. If you do not know where you stand, I think what I would recommend is, you can call up, say, Netregistry and speak to someone on the SEO team and ask them to give you a free report as where you stand on search engines. At least you'll know, are you in the right place? Are you targeting the right kind of people? Or, do you have the right keyword strategy? One of the other things about e-commerce or online business is that, it's much more easier to get business from an existing customer than a new customer. So it's all about customer retention. Now, email is the best form of customer retention, because depending upon the products and services that you sell, you might have people coming to you and maybe buying one-off, or they might come and regularly buy from you. So depending upon what kind of products and services you offer, you got to work on a retention strategy. How do you get people back to your website? Or every time someone plans to buy the product that you offer, what will make them come back to your store? So just don't think about a one-off cycle. If you're trying to spend money on marketing and saying, I want to drive people to my website, and then you look at your cost of marketing and say that's too expensive, don't look at the initial sale, look at the entire sale value of that customer. Because if the customer is going to come 4 times in a year and buy from you, that's your actual sale value, not the first sale. So email marketing is one of the greatest products that you can use to drive more people, onto your store. I mean, some of the recent successes on email marketing are websites like, Jump on It, Groupon. The entire model is purely based on email marketing. What these companies have is they have a large email base. So someone like Jump on It has got an email base of around 1.2 million email addresses. Every day they send emails across to those people. Now, because they have that reach, even with a 2% conversions, they're going to get, a lot of sales. So what you got to do is you got to find a way, how do you link your email marketing strategy to your e-commerce store? Okay. You got to make sure that you're not pushing your information across to someone unwillingly. So don't use email marketing as a spam tactic of sending special offers every day. Okay. Use the email marketing as a strategy where you send them information that will educate them, send them information what happens within the industry, and occasionally send them an information about a special offer. Okay. No one buys, the products that you sell is not something which people buy daily. If that's the case, then don't sell them a daily offer. Okay. Make sure that you use email marketing as a way of keeping in touch with your customers. Okay. Email marketing is a good way of refreshing someone's memory that, okay, you bought this product from me, this is a great product, this is what's happened with the new product. And believe me, it's much more easier to get business from an existing customer than a new business. And not only that, from a marketing point of view, your cost per acquisition is much lesser from an existing customer than a new customer. The next thing also to think about is social media. Now there's a lot of hype about, Facebook, Twitter, and all these things coming up. Now, whether you like it or not, you need to use that platform, because that medium is becoming more and more popular. Okay, I guess nowadays people are spending more time on Facebook than any other kind of community forum or whatever it is. So things like Facebook, Twitter, Foursquare, all these, YouTube, they're becoming more and more popular. And what these social media platforms can do is actually drive good traffic to your website. You got to use social media as a tool of getting your customers to talk about your business. The moment you go onto social media and start promoting your own business, you're not going to get any mileage out of it. So think about a strategy how you can convince someone to go on to their social media platform or their Facebook account and recommend your services. Now, the only reason someone will do that if they had a good experience with your company. Okay, so imagine if you had you have an e-commerce on your e-commerce store, you have a sale. Now you can have an exclusive sale, or you can have an extremely attractive sale, which is for a limited period. If anyone buys from that and they get a good bargain, they're definitely going to go and share that with the rest of the friends and family. So think about how you can use social media to drive qualified people to your website. But don't use things like Twitter to go on to Twitter every day and say you're having a sale, because then you get classified as someone as spam. The best way to make social media successful for your business is to get others to talk about your business. I might be running a bit over time with regards to my webinar by another 5 or 10 minutes. That's because what I try to do is try to put in a lot of information about e-commerce, about the new trends and so on. So if you're not using social media for your platform right now, it's really important that you understand that whether you like it or not, it's going to get more and more important for your business. I'm having a slight delay with going on to the next slide, so please bear with me. I'm sorry about the glitch. I might just need to restart this presentation, so please bear with me about. Okay, I just want to make sure that is everyone able to see the slides now? Okay, sorry about that. I guess that's a bit of glitch with technology. What's also important is mobile is getting more and more popular. In other words, what's happening is that the amount of time today we spend on devices like iPhone, iPads, and Android phones are increasing drastically. And moving forward, the number of people using internet on an iPhone or an iPad is going to increase. What is important is if you have an e-commerce store, you got to make sure. Sorry about that, Michelle. I just got your message. Okay, I'm sorry about the issue with the time factor. I'll get my marketing team to make sure that we make it really clear as to with regards to the timing issue between interstates. With regards, just going back to the mobile industry, it's picking up drastically. So what's going to happen is you've got to make sure that if someone goes onto your website on an iPhone, how easy is it for them to actually make a purchase? So it's really important that when people come onto your website, they might be coming through an iPhone, they might be coming through, an Android phone or whatever it is. So make sure that um, your website is mobile friendly. Now, normally with mobile websites or e-commerce stores, it's really difficult to make it e-commerce friendly um, in terms of mobile friendly, but it's a good thing to go and try it out and see exactly, is it possible for someone to go online and actually work on it. So it's really important for you to maybe take an iPhone, take an Android, take an iPad and see how is the user experience. Can someone actually use these devices and shop online? Because in the next 12 months time, it's going to be an important factor. We've seen it happening with our own business. We've seen it, that the number of people who are buying domains online using an iPhone is really, increasing. And that's why I guess some companies today spend time and efforts, building up mobile apps and so on. If you look at some of the trends with regards to Facebook commerce, now this is something which is actually picking up in certain industries. Okay, I guess Facebook is actually enjoying the kind of exposure that they're getting, so they're literally getting to every form of whether it's commercial or non-commercial. So Facebook commerce is the new buzzword happening in the market, wherein you've got Facebook credits, Facebook deals, and so on. So, but again, it's not something that is suitable for every business. A lot of times people come and ask me about, is it, should I worry about social media? The answer is, if your customers are spending a lot of time on social media, then yes, you need to worry about social media. So the same thing goes with, Facebook commerce. It is picking up. It's trying to target people who spend a lot of time on Facebook, and just because, Facebook is their practically, there's their home page on their computer or whatever it is, they're more likely to, react to a Facebook transaction than a normal transaction. But having said that, it's not that Facebook is going to change the entire e-commerce industry. Okay, Facebook, yes, it's there, it's picking up, but again, it's got a limited reach and it's got limited success. Okay, however, some research has been done on Facebook stores and clearly shows that the click-through rates on Facebook e-commerce is much lesser than that of email as well. So Facebook is not a substitute for your e-commerce store. But it can, it's multiple platforms. It's like having, 3 retail stores, so one is for one in the city, one somewhere else. So Facebook it could be just like having an additional store. Just like, a lot of businesses today have an e-commerce store and they have an eBay store. It's all about the extended reach that you would like to target people who spend a lot of time on Facebook. So if you don't have a Facebook e-commerce store, it's not something that you got to drop everything and start worrying about it. But these are, Facebook e-commerce is one of the trends, so depending upon what is there, you have to look at those options. So at the moment, if you look at most e-commerce stores or Facebook stores that are selling online, they're mostly driven by celebrities and people who are popular, because what they're doing is they're using social media, they're using Twitter as a platform, Facebook as a platform, to drive people to their Facebook store. If you'll need a copy of the presentation, you can just shoot me an email, and which my email address will be on my last slide, and I can send you all the stats. The next trend that is coming up is what we call as social, local, and mobile. Now, this is a new trend and it's really picking up. The trend is something wherein the assumption is around that almost everyone is using a smartphone, and because a smartphone has a GPS functionality, so you can actually advertise to people within that location. And for instance, you're traveling somewhere in the city and you would like to go to, let's say, a Thai restaurant. Okay, you're more likely to go onto something like Foursquare or maybe on Twitter and ask for recommendations. So this new concept of social local mobile is picking up. Okay, it's picked up very well in the US. It's still a bit new out here in Australia, but the trend is that in the next 6 to 12 months time, it's going to be common practice for for people trying to do marketing strategies and so on. And if you really consider why this is important, is because imagine 40% of the people who actually use a smartphone actually, while they're shopping around, they're more likely to call up a friend, ask for recommendation, or you might take a picture of a product and say, that's a great product, maybe I'll think about it, or some people actually look at the product and say, I have a smartphone, I'm a smart person, let me go on to Google now and see, can I get the same product at a discounted price somewhere else. Okay, now what happens is that while people are searching for it, if your website is not mobile friendly and so on, you're going to lose out on those traffic. Now these people are people who are in the actual buying mode. Okay, so what's really important is you have to think about the entire mobile generation as we speak. The people who actually use mobile phones to practically do everything. So you can shop online using a mobile phone. Whether you use an app or you use a website, it's going to have a good impact on your revenue line. And what's really important about this new concept is that you're actually trying to attract people when they have their free time. And that's why things like Groupon and Living Social, okay, have been successful. But there are better concepts coming out of that. So today the problem with websites like Groupon, Living Social, Jump on It is that every website has got their own deal. Imagine if there are around close to 80 such websites. If you're looking for a good deal, would you look at 80 websites? Imagine if you subscribe to all of them. Look at the amount of emails that are going to hit your inbox. Okay, there are companies that are coming up with some better solutions around that, and I think that's what the future of e-commerce is heading to. It's trying to identify where your customers are, and based on their preferences, based on their location, you give them the right kind of message. And these are trends that are going to kick in. It may not happen right away, but it's going to happen in the near future. Okay, and what's really happening is that mobile phones are getting, or smartphones are getting much more cheaper. The amount of people using smartphones in Australia is much higher than most of the other countries. So you can imagine that the smartphone is going to be the tool where people are going to access information. So next step moving forward, it's all about mobile commerce. So we're going from e-commerce to f-commerce to m-commerce, and this is the trend for e-commerce. So if you're looking at getting an e-commerce store, you got to think about if what does your potential customers use as a device to look for information. Is it a physical computer? It's is it a mobile device or whatever it is? I'm pretty sure most of you all actually use your phone to do research online. So not only can you do research online, you might as well shop online. What stops you from shopping online? So but having said that, it's not that you have to worry about it right away. This is the future. This is what is going to happen. Okay, even you take something like e-commerce. It took a long time to become popular. I mean, e-commerce almost took around 10 years to get popular. So that doesn't mean that mobile commerce will come up straight away. It also has its own time. But I guess right now we adapt to technology much more faster than what we used to 10 years back. So if you look at in the last 60 minutes, what I've tried to cover is more about, how to improve your e-commerce. But I guess, every e-commerce store is different. So every business has got a different unique selling point or a different message. But it's all about, are you able to measure what's happening on your website? You need to know where people drop off from your website. Okay, you got to make sure that it is extremely easy for someone to make a purchase online. Make sure that your checkout process is extremely simple and it's pretty quick. Okay, interact with your customers. Give them an option to come back to you if they've not made a purchase right now. Most importantly, be found on search engines, because if you're not found on search engines, it's like a retail store which is on a floor which no one walks into. Okay, make sure that you use your email marketing strategy the right way. Okay, get used to social media whether you like it or not, because that's the best way to connect to customers. And also keep an eye on emerging technology like f-commerce, mobile commerce, and so on. Okay, I do understand that there was a bit of glitch from our side with regards to the timing factor, especially for people who are in Queensland and so on. I'm extremely sorry about that. If you missed out on the presentation, I can send a copy of the presentation, or if you would like to have a chat with me, you can shoot me an email and I can actually run you through the entire presentation over the phone to make up for our miscommunication with regards to the timing of the webinar. If you need a copy of the presentation, shoot me an email, or if you would like to, have some free consultation about how to improve your e-commerce, I'm happy to help. Shoot me an email. We'll have a chat on the phone, and I can tell you what you should do, or what are the few things that you can maybe fix up your existing website. I hope this session was informative. I know the latest slides about F-commerce, M-commerce, and social media scares people a bit, but end of the day, it depends upon your business. If your customers are spending time, then whether you like it or not, you need to jump into social media. Thank you very much for coming to the webinar. If you have any questions or you need a copy of the presentation, shoot me an email and I'll get back to you. Thank you very much.